Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another exciting video on this YouTube channel here today. What I would like to do in this lesson is to showcase a brand new set of tools that I've written out and that I published onto CocoaPods. It is called LBTATools, and the main point of this project, or this library rather, is to kind of showcase how you can eliminate a lot of UI code that you have to type out to lay out your elements inside of your screens. And so what exactly do I mean? Well, you should be seeing two simulators on the screen right now. And the middle simulator right here has a bunch of cells instead of a overall collection view. And if you think about all of these cell layouts, they're pretty common, and you probably see it all over the App Store in its many applications, right? And so how exactly do we lay out, let's say, this cell, and this cell? Well, it's actually pretty simple if you really understand how to use a UIStackView for horizontal and vertical layout management. So for example, this view right here, everything is centered inside of a vertical stack view. Instead of this right here, we have a horizontal stack view and then a vertical stack view here. And this guy is a combination of two stack views, one with a margin at the very bottom. So it might seem a little bit complicated, but with the LBTATools library or framework, however you want to think about it, it's actually really easy to pull off these layout tricks with just one line of code. All right, so let me go ahead and jump into an Xcode project and show you how we can transform this simulator right here, this project, into this application that you're seeing that's looking pretty darn nice. All right, let's go ahead and get started right now. Alrighty guys, welcome to the coding session for today's video. If you want to follow along with today's lesson, and make sure to download the starter project using a link in the description below and just open it up. You should be able to have all of these files right here, and just open up this XC workspace file and you'll get this project right here. Now I'm going to run this in the iPhone XS simulator, which is this left one right here. Once you launch it, you'll see three yellow cells at the top, one red one in the middle, and at the bottom you'll have this green cell. All of these cells are right here, the yellow, the red, the green, and we have our very simple UI collection view controller that helps us lay out everything. All right, so that's basically the starter project in a nutshell. And the first thing I would like to show you how to do is to lay out these cells right here. So these three horizontal cells, let me point it out for you using PMouse here. So this cell here, here, and here, I want to transform these yellow cells into this view. So how exactly do I do that? Well, why don't I first go into the yellow cell here, so simple vertical stack cell, and let me turn off the background color of yellow, and I want to turn on the border width and set this guy either to 1 or 0.5. And let me show you what that does, and then we'll move on to the next part of today's lesson. Okay, so the border allows us to draw this frame around this little white area at the very top. And now what I would like to ask you is, how exactly do you think you should lay out these views here, right? So this view, and this view, using two elements. First is the UI image view at the top, and then this label down here, and then also, more importantly, how to center everything inside of the middle, like so. And after you think about it for a couple of seconds here, the way that you would probably do this is to anchor this view at the very top here, center it somewhere, give it a width and height anchor, and then lay out the label right below it somehow. And that's actually the code that we want to avoid, because I feel like that type of code is really hard to maintain. And so the solution that I would like to use instead, and this is something that you should learn, is to use a UIStackView to lay out everything inside of your views. So let me show you how to do that using plain old native UI kit code, and then we'll get into LBTATools in just one second. So first thing you need to do is to create your image view. And this guy is pretty straightforward. Let's use an image constructor here. Now let me grab the image literal. Let's use Command-Shift-M, drag this nice little girl here, and just drag it right there. You should be able to get this image here. So that's just inside of your assets. And the next thing we want to do is to create some kind of name label. So UI label. And then inside of LBTATools, we have this text constructor. Comes with some font too, but let's just use this one for now. And what do we want to call her? So girly, girly McGirly. And that sounds like a pretty good name. All right, so these are the two elements that we want to lay out. And the way you do this, instead of a stack view kind of little methodology here, is to use a UIStackView constructor. And make sure to type this guy out correctly, arrange subviews. And by default, the stack view is going to use a horizontal orientation. So what I mean is, once you add your subview using add subview of the stack view, and then let's also use fill superview and run this guy again. Fill superview comes from the LBTATools framework, so make sure to use this. And once you run your application, you'll see that the image view actually takes up the entire stack view. And the reason why that happens is because the image view is a little special, and if it doesn't have a height anchor, then it's just going to fill up the entire view. Something else that you can do is to make sure that the stack view has a distribution of .fill equally. If you do this, I believe the image view is going to fill up half of the stack view. And so it's left right here, so it's horizontal orientation, and this is half, and we have the label here. Now to fix the orientation, all you got to do is to change the axis and vertical like so. I don't exactly remember all these properties, and every now and then I still have to do Stack Overflow research to make sure everything is correct. Now the image right here doesn't have the correct aspect ratio. What you can do is to use this content mode constructor and either use fit or fill, and once you provide the scale aspect ratio correctly, the image is gonna look a lot better. Okay, so as you can see, everything is kind of coming into place here. We have our image view and we have our label at the bottom. Now for the label, you can do a couple of things like text alignment and .center like so. These are all just convenient constructors that I have inside of my LBTATools project that allows you to, create everything in one line. It's a lot easier than those really, really large chunk of closure code that we really want to avoid. All right. So having said all that, let's kind of make sure that the image right here is rounded off as well as being centered in the middle. And you might be asking, how exactly do we do that? Well, the image view right here, you can actually do something like this. So image view, and you can give this guy some kind of width anchor, or at least you can try to do this. So you can constrain it to some kind of constant. Let's just say the width is 80 and say is active equals to true. Now I believe once you try to set this up right here, you're gonna get some warnings in terms of the constraints down here, and it's really hard to figure out what exactly it's telling you, because a stack view is a little hard to work with if you don't know exactly what the options are. So the moment that you set up an image view with a specific width, it's actually going to fight with the stack view in terms of trying to expand everything inside of the stack view. So one way to fix this problem is to use something called the alignment for the stack view and just set this guy equal to .center. Now the alignment by default is going to be fill, I believe. So it's .fill. So .fill is the default. And you change it to center, it's no longer going to fight with the stack view to try to fill everything on the horizontal axes like that. So in other words, it's going to take in the constant of 80, whatever you specify here. So if you specify 60, it's just going to be 60, and it's going to appear a lot thinner. Not that there's anything wrong with being too wide, but this is the thin version of our image view. Okay, so that's basically what you need to do to lay out this entire thing using default native UI kit code, which is not always that fun to write out. You can see this gets pretty gnarly after a while, right? If you want to make the image view rounded, you can say layer.corner radius equals 60 divided by 2 here. Basically, it's just, whatever this is divided by 2. If you run it again, you should be able to get what you need. So let's hopefully, get this going here. Something else that you can do is to modify the height anchor to be something taller. So height anchor is 60, that is active equals to true. Okay, so let's run this. And finally, let's try to do this all in one line of code. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of this is pretty painful to type out. You have to set up all these properties. You're repeating stack view over and over, image view, and image view. And you don't exactly want to do this. So let's see. The LBTATools, the way we do this is actually really simple. So once I comment out all of that and run it again, you're not going to get any of these views inside of this box here. So let's see, all we have is a plain white box with that border, so that's pretty nice. Let me try to repeat this behavior here with something called a stack. So stack takes in a UI view or variadic arguments of UI views right here. Also contains spacing and alignment. So let me just use this one right here. And by default, a stack, in my opinion, is vertical. So this is a vertical UI stack view. And all you gotta do is to pump in the image view and also the name label like that. And running this, you'll see it kind of does what we had earlier. I believe the image view is going to take up everything. So one thing that you can do is you can say with, let's see, with height and with width and with height is what you can do. So let's just do 60 here and run again. You'll see that it's going to appear down at the bottom with a bunch of warnings again. So you just want to say comma and alignment as dot center like that. So basically it takes care of this property here. So running this now, you'll see that it kind of does that here. And I believe I need to actually give the name label some kind of height. So let's see with height, and let's give this guy a 20. No, I don't think I want to do the name label, but I'm going to say dot with height of 60 like so. Let's get rid of that comment here and try to run. I think I need the name label back and run again. Okay, now compile and running, I'm on a pretty fast machine, which should give me this result here. So looking at this line of code, it should be pretty easy to read and to figure out, what the hell is going on here. We have a vertical stack, image view with 60 and 60 for width and height. And then we have the name label. So pretty clear what's going on. If you want to use a different version of this call, you can say with size. I'm not really sure if this is better or not. So let's say 80 by 80. And I'll try to run that again, but let's say image view dot layer dot corner radius equals 80 over 2. And that should be okay. I'm not really sure why Swift doesn't like the 2 next to the slash here. But running this again, you'll get this view like so. All right, so as you can see, the stacking is really, really simple. You just call stack and you get this view here. If you want to pad the top with some padding, you can either use with margins, that's a UI edge inset, or something that's a little bit easier is use pad top with, let's say, a value of 6. I'm gonna try that and run again. So there's a lot of different options that you can play around with using LBTATools, and 6 gives you that at the top. So change that to 8 and you should be okay. So let's kind of wrap this baby up. And that's pretty much how you accomplish the layout using a vertical stack view. Okay, so a lot of work just to explain how to get up and running with LBTATools, but once you get used to how to use this stacking library, it makes your life a lot easier. So you can imagine if the view gets more complicated, then this bit of code here that you have to look at gets really scary. I call it the code from hell, and I would like to avoid it as much as possible. And this is actually really fast to type out. All right, so hopefully you kind of understand what's going on, and make sure to leave a question down below if you are confused about how this works. But basically, make sure to also import LBTATools. That way you can have these methods accessible within your file. Okay, moving on here, let's kind of talk about this red cell here. So let's get rid of those arrows. And the next thing I want to move on to is this cell. So this cell in the middle. As you can see, it's a little bit more complicated. And the red cell is right here. So click that. And let's get rid of that as well. So the red cell is what I want to take care of. And if I say layer.border width equals 1, let's kind of see the difference between a border of 1 and 0.5. You might not be able to tell, and it's a little bit thicker, so looks pretty good. Now to actually make this work, I'm going to directly use something called an Hstack. So to save some time here, let me just copy these bad boys. And let's say copy here. And we need this little message label as well. So message and label is right underneath the name label. And UI label has a text constructor. So let's say text is, did you enjoy last night? I had a great time. Let's meet up again later this week. I'll show you what's up. I used to write a lot of fan fiction, so that's kind of what's going on here. And for the font, you can just modify this to system font of size. Let's say something like 12, a little smaller. Text color, you can use .gray, whatever you want. The alignment, if you don't want to type in these properties here, you can just hit backspace and you should be okay. By default, these labels have one line. So this is pretty nice. You can just specify 2 here. And those are the 3 UI elements. All right, so now is the fun part of actually stacking these guys inside of this view here. So let me show you how to actually do this very quickly. So in addition to stacking, so this is a stack, which is vertical, I have something called Hstack, which is pretty much the same thing, but horizontally. And the way I'm going to actually do this is to use the image view here. And then let's just use the name label. And I'll try to run this. We are gonna see some issues with the image view, I believe. So that's what the image view is doing. Let's make sure to give it, let's say width size, and let's just say a nit of, I don't know, 60 by 60. Sounds good. I don't know, but I'm always a fan of 64. So let's see what 60 does. So that's what you get with a 60, and you get some warnings down here. So with an Hstack, I believe you want to use an alignment of center as well. And we're using a horizontal stack view. When you use a alignment of center, everything's going to be centered vertically. And if you use a vertical stack view, it's the opposite, which is always confusing, but that's basically how it works. Okay, so the name label right here is also centered, which is okay. If you want to push it to the left, for the name label, girly make girl, we're gonna bring you to the left. And hopefully this is going to illustrate what this library does. And here we go, we have girly make girly right next to the image view here. If you want to specify some spacing, you can do spacing, and let's use a value of, I don't know, 16. 16 is also one of my favorite numbers in terms of padding values. And you see for the horizontal stack view now, we have a 16 spacing here. The next thing we want to do is to figure out how to align these 2 labels on the right side, right? We have girly make girl in bold, and then the message right below it. So the way you do this is to combine a horizontal stack view with a vertical one. And let me show you how that works by removing the name label. And let's use a horizontal stack view. And let's just stack with the name label and the message label like so. And as you can see, it's all pretty easy. And hopefully you can understand the benefits of using these stack views. Hstack and a vertical stack looks just like that. If you want to change the name label to, let's say, font, bold system font of 14 will do that. You can also provide spacing for the vertical stack view, which is like this, and 6 like that. I know that this appears to be like a lot of new code, and you're just not used to looking at it, but once you get used to how the syntax looks like, it gets pretty simple, and it's pretty straightforward how to deal with it. Lastly, if you want to round off this image view, you can provide the layer and corner radius, but what you can also do is to use something called a circular image view. So let me try to cut that and say circular image view. Hopefully I can get this going here with 60 and the image, and let me just remove this here. So this is a nice trick. If you know what the width of your image view needs to be, you can just construct it using this guy here, but for some reason, can't exactly get this to work. So let me just undo that and bring you back to what you were before. Okay, so running this again. Let's see, that should get me back up here. So I believe something is wrong with the pods and the version that I installed. So that's kind of what you get. If you want to provide the corner radius, do this again. And I'll just paste that in here, use the value of 60, and you should be good to go. For the overall the stack view. So you see how there's padding on this edge, and maybe at the top and the bottom. You can use a with margins call on the actual stack view. So Hstack gives you back the entire stack view, and you can just directly call it with margins on the stack view, which will set the layout margins using this here. So you can use top of, I don't know, 12, 12, 12, 12. Let's just see what that looks like right now. On the left, top, right, and bottom, you'll have margins kind of specified like so. If you know exactly what your margins need to be, and if they're all the same, you can use all sides of 12. Again, these are just convenient methods that will help you eliminate the code that you have to type out. And as you can see, again, this code right here is much easier to look at, in my opinion. If you were to do this without using UIStackViews, just imagine how many anchors and layout constraints you would have to specify. You know, this image view has to be on the left somewhere. You need to specify the width and the height, center it in the y-axis somewhere, and then specify this guy to the right of the image view and this guy underneath the name label. It's just a mess. So this right here, was it 57, 60, you know, about 4 lines of code, and you can, you know, embed even more stack views inside of this guy if you really wanted to. Now, the last thing I want to get done with here is the green cell, which is this guy. So click on this, and let's see, we have the image view here. We have a name label, we have the text, and then we have this explore thing with the right arrow here. So just think about how you would lay this out in your head for a couple of seconds, and I'll show you how to do that. Let's say right now. So stacking with margin cell. This is the green cell. Again, we are going to disable the background color. Layout dot border width equals 2. Let's see how thick the 2 value is. So running again on a really fast machine. So this stuff compiles really quickly for me. And here we go. We have the bottom little cell, and all I want to do is to kind of repeat this behavior with a stack view. And in the interest of time, let me take these values and paste it in here. Let's see, we have that. I think I'm missing the explore and the right arrow. So let's see, let explore label equals UI label. Label. Sometimes I type too fast for the Swift compiler. So text is the explore font, bold system font of, I don't know, 10, 12. Let's use 12 for now. So that's the explore label, and I'll draw the arrow icon in just a little bit. I don't know if I should leave these arrows on. I'll just get rid of them right now. It looks a lot better. So how exactly do I lay this out? Well, what I'm going to do is to use 2 vertical stack views. But before I introduce the second stack view, let me do the first one. So let's just call a stack. This is pretty simple. A stack. As you can see, we have the image view at the top. I like to kind of do this visually in the code vertically like this. It makes it easier to follow. Message label, and then we have the explore label. So stack is actually an extension on UIView. So any type of view that you have, you can just call stack directly on it. And because a collection view cell subclasses UIView, you can just call stack like so. If you run your code now, you'll see that the image view takes up a lot of the space. So like always, you have to specify some kind of height for image views. And let's use the value of 200. I think that should be okay. Let's kind of see what this bad boy looks like right here. So we have 200. And then we have the name label, however, taking up the rest of the space inside of your stack view. One trick that you want to use is for the area that you want to kind of expand and take up all the remaining space, you know, whether vertically or horizontally, you can just use a dummy spacer UI view. So image view, the name, message, the spacer, and the explore, and you'll get this effect. So this is a really useful trick for anyone that, you know, wants to speed up iOS UI development. It does have the overhead of adding an extra view inside of your view hierarchy, but I think it's totally worth it. It doesn't really impact the speed of your application. So having said all that, why don't we now talk about how we can include the margin for this bottom stack view-ish thing down at the bottom here. So you can see we have our image view, we have the labels down here. So just think about how you would do this, right? Well, if you have your stack view here, you can call with margins, and you can say all edges of, let's say 16, and I'll show you what that looks like. Some of you guys can guess the flaw of this approach here. As you can see, the entire stack view will have the margin on the top right here. So that's the main problem. So one easy trick to fixing this issue here is to just wrap everything underneath here inside of a vertical stack view. So let's get rid of that. And what I'll do is I'm going to cut this bit of code here. So let's see what we have. So that's what we get. I'm going to cut this code and stack it again like that. And I'll try to run now. It's going to look almost exactly like it did before. I think I want to take this label here as well. So put that, remove that. And the last thing I want to do is to say with margins and all edges of, let's say 14. And I'll run it now. You'll see that because we have two stack views, the stack view at the very bottom here will have the margins applied to the bottom stack view. And the overall stack view from the edges of top, left, right, and bottom will not have these margins here. So hopefully that makes sense. And the last thing that you might want to do is to introduce some spacing. So we will do that. And so spacing, no, I don't think I want to do that here. Let's do that here. So stack, I'm going to say comma, spacing, and let's try to use a value of 8. So what I'm trying to accomplish here is the spacing here, and let's see, yeah, the spacing here can be fixed with just this spacing like so. All right, so pretty easy stuff. And a couple of different problems that you'll face is sometimes when you're typing out the code here, it becomes a little bit difficult to read and you don't know where to specify your properties. And this is just something that you have to get used to. But for me, I think this UI code is a lot easier to look at. If you want to put this little arrow icon inside of your little stack view here, you are going to want to use an Hstack. So Hstack, so explore label is down here, right? I'm going to replace the explore label with a Hstack. So it's a horizontal stack view. We need the explorer here. And why don't I use an arrow label? So arrow label equals UI image view, and we'll say image. And for now, I'm just going to use the face here because I don't think I have the arrow asset. And do I have the arrow asset? No, I do not. So that's a little unfortunate. Let's use the girl for now. And why don't we say arrow label, that's not actually arrow label, command shift E. Is that what it is? Command control E. So arrow image view. And let's try to run this. So this is going to be very problematic. If you don't know what's going on with your stack view, this might be a little hard to debug. So you get your image view right here. And what you want to do is you want to say with, let's see, with the height or width. Let's say with width of 20, maybe 12. Let's just see what that looks like for now. The arrow is going to have a width of 20. And it looks like that. Let's also give this a width height of, let's say 12. And then I'm going to give it a spacer view. So UI view like that. And let me just close off this pane here to give it a little more space to look at. And as you can see, we have this image view here. If it was the arrow, it would look like the arrow, obviously. And if you want to bump this up a little bit to see it, you can do that and that. The spacers here, so I'm just going to specify some spacing of, let's use a value of 8. That's going to give this little space right here between these two elements inside of the horizontal stack. And that's how you lay out everything inside of your entire collection view. All right, so now that you kind of see how the stack and Hstack works inside of the LBTATools library, the questions that you might be having right now is, what exactly is the magic behind all this code, right? Well, you can actually inspect the pod library by either going to the GitHub repository or just look at the pods down here. You can open this guy up, and I believe most of the code is inside of the UIStackView here. So with margins, you kind of saw that, pad left, top, bottom, and right. And then we also have UIView stacking right here. So here is an internal method. Basically, stack right here calls this entire method. As you can see, stack does this with _stack. Hstack also calls the same method, but with the horizontal axis alignment. And all it's doing is what we did before with the native UIKit code. We are generating a stack view, and then we are adding it to the parent, and then we're filling the entire super view. It actually returns our stack view, and that's why we can also chain methods to the very end of our stack calls. Now, if you want to download the source code for the entire project that you saw in today's video or the starter project, you can find the couple of links in the description below. If you have any questions whatsoever, make sure to leave a comment down there as well. And hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Bye guys.